Okay, it's now 7 o'clock, and the public hearing of the planning board is scheduled to begin at 7, so we're going to be starting now. I am Bruce Colton. I'm the chairman of the planning board. This is Walter Gunn, Donald Holland, and Heather Laporte. We have a fifth member whose name is Ken Taylor. As far as we know, he was planning on being here tonight, but he's not here, so we'll start without him. Four members is a quorum. What we are going to be doing tonight is discussing four bylaw amendments, which will be on the agenda for the articles, or I should say on the warrant for the town meeting in November. We'll be doing them essentially in the order that they're listed on the agenda. The first item that we'll be discussing will be a proposed rezoning of property which is adjacent to the Long Meadow Shops, to rezone the property from residential to business, which is for an expansion of the shops. The next article we'll be taking up will be to add an amendment to the zoning bylaws relative to parking on front lawns of residences. We then will be taking up, adding again to the zoning bylaws, a definition of family, which has not been in the bylaws before. By the way, this has absolutely nothing to do with group homes. It would not affect them whatsoever. And the final amendment we'll be taking up is another amendment to the zoning bylaws having to do with essentially the way the Zoning Board of Appeals handles non-conforming buildings and uses. But we'll be discussing them more, obviously, when we get to them. Now, as far as I know, there's no one here from the Long Meadow Shops. They don't need to be here. There's no one here from the Long Meadow Shops. Essentially, the article which will appear on the bylaw, the article which will appear on the warrant, it'll be Article 12, which I'll read it, though it may sound like sort of gibberish, just sort of hearing it this way. It says, beginning at a point at the northwest intersection of the existing, 20-foot 0 inches easement with the property line of parcel 2 as previously described by a curve to the left having a radius of 286.82 feet. Thence easterly on other land now or formerly of Daniel Burbank Jr., 80.55 feet. Then northeasterly on land also formerly owned by Daniel Burbank, 131.9 feet to the land of the First Church of Christ Scientist. Then south on said land, 136.16 feet, then southwest on William Street, 586.82 feet, then 164.81 feet to the southeast corner of the first parcel. Essentially, this is to rezone. Well, I think everybody knows what the Long Meadow Shops look like. And the eastern boundary of the Long Meadow Shops is the parking lot, which towards the East Long Meadow end, and the First Church of Christ Christian Science is what's beyond that. There's a lot of empty land, basically sort of grass with a few trees in between them. Most of that land, most of that land is owned by the church, but essentially the the owners of the Long Meadow Shops want to expand the property because they want to construct another building on the site. We will, if the land is rezoned, the planning board will be holding a site and design review hearing on their proposed project, and obviously that's open to the public, and the public can comment, and butters and will of course receive notice and so forth. Essentially, what they want to do is erect a building that would house a new CVS, which would include a drive-through prescription window, a clothing store. I believe J. Crew was the store they've been talking about, and possibly a third store in the new building. The new building would be detached from the existing shopping center, and obviously something else would be moving into the current CVS property or section of the shopping center. As you may or may not be aware, our bylaws do have fairly strict parking requirements for various types of businesses based on the size, the number of employees, and so forth. The currently existing shopping center is actually 4 parking spaces short of what they are required. However, the bylaws also allow petitioners to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals to get a waiver if you're actually, I guess, a waiver of up to 20% of the required parking spaces. Obviously, if you need, and I'm just picking these numbers out of the air, if you need 500 parking spaces and you have 496, it's no big deal. The proposed plans that have been shown to us obviously include a lot more store space, which requires a lot more parking. The original plan also included more parking space, but as it was originally presented to the planning board, they were 98 parking spaces shy of what would be required under our bylaws. The board, at several meetings they had with us, indicated displeasure with that, and they then came back in front of us with a revised plan which added about another 30 parking spaces, and they then, in fact, came back a second time, or I guess a third time, with the second revision to the plan, which actually now meets the proposed or the required number of parking spaces. Again, all of this would be gotten, if the town votes to rezone this property, all of this, their building plan and their parking plan and so forth would all be discussed at a site and design review hearing before the planning board. I mean, it would be a required hearing, and of course the public is invited and can comment on it as well. If the town meeting votes against this rezoning of the property, that would have the effect of killing the proposed addition to the Longmeadow Shops. Actually, I see the Longmeadow Shops has arrived.
I'm also, Matt Whitmar's right there.
Okay. I guess the first, I would, I guess, does anyone, I'm not quite sure how soon you came in, do you, since essentially you're the petitioner, do any of you wish to make a statement or a comment? Okay, and please, we're being broadcast tonight. Please identify yourself or yourself.
And we are Steve Walker from Grove Property Fund and Matt Whitmar from Phase Zero Design.
Okay. And I guess I was trying to sort of briefly explain what the proposal was, why you were seeking to rezone the property, if you'd like to say anything further.
Yeah, and Matt has a presentation that he'd like to show everyone this evening.
Certainly. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce, and thanks for having us. I appreciate this. I did want to quickly run through, and I appreciate some of the feedback you provided, Bruce. We have a presentation that I can run quickly through about the Longmeadow Shops, which many of you are familiar with. We had introduced this project in the past, and as Bruce had mentioned, gotten some feedback from planning and zoning, and we'll certainly prepare tonight to address that as part of this presentation. For many of you that know the Longmeadow Shops, it's quite an interesting development in the center of Longmeadow. It is what we would call a lifestyle center. which is a cluster of mom-and-pop stores as well as national brands that create a centralized shopping district for retail and restaurant. The shops certainly are very viable. It is something that Grove Properties purchased about 20 years ago. They have done a lot to maintain the property as well as improve it. And over the past years have brought in such nationals as Starbucks and The Gap, Max Burger, Ann Taylor. And one of their concerns as they look to the future is certainly having a viable shopping center that also can expand and continue to attract national as well as regional and local tenants. One of the things that interestingly came up at Grove Properties has struggled with a bit is they've been approached by some nationals recently that have expressed interest in the property, moving into the shops at Longmeadow, and they really don't have the space now for them. In situations like this is typically what happens in the retail environment. Other developers will come on board and create shopping centers elsewhere, in Agawam or in the northern areas, north of Springfield, to accommodate these tenants. When that happens, you often get tenant flight as part of that. So typically we see shopping areas like this tend to go down. It's not something that Grove Property would wish to see or wish to see for the town. So that really began the process. Some of the things that we've looked at with the space itself, and I have an aerial here, which shows the outline of the property, is beginning to look at the area to the east of the site, which right now is undeveloped. It's this area right here. This is the church, if you will. This is the church parking. There's a green space in this area that's owned by the church. This is Bliss Road right here. The shops, as you know, and the ball fields at this end. This is the area in question right now that we're looking at. One of the shops here, which is CVS, which is an anchor tenant for the site, has expressed interest in getting a drive-through, which they do not have and we cannot do within the existing confines of the site right now. So there's certainly a good opportunity to expand the CVS, give them a drive-through on this existing parcel, and allow that to occur. This is the existing shops right now. As it is, it's in its configuration. One of the things that we heard from the planning board last we met is some of the concerns about the existing parking. The way the parking is set up now is that you access up through these major entry points, and then you actually come along the sides of the building, circulating through the parking lot, along the front of the building, excuse me, and you have these dead-end corridors that you drop down to find parking. If a parking space isn't available, you need to back out. It does create a lot of issues. One of the other things about this parking area, the way it's configured, is the majority of the parking is in areas where it doesn't necessarily serve the major tenants that drive a lot of business. We see that from Max Burger and Bertucci's. We also see that from CVS. There's a lot of trips being generated by these stores, and there's not a lot of parking field in front of them. A lot of it is pushed to the outskirts right now and isn't really serving the stores themselves. So that alone was also a strong focus on trying to address some of these issues and solving some of the parking, as well as the relocation of CVS. This is a zoning map that I wanted to share with you, and what we have here is the area that is currently zoned business that accommodates the shops. The entire property that's owned by Grove Properties is actually this area. You can see it's a much larger parcel. The area in pink and the area in green are currently zoned residential, A1. Again, this is business, so interestingly enough, it's residential that almost shapes the shops in a U configuration. The desire right now for the zone change is to change this parcel here, which is approximately 1.89 acres, I believe, that is zoned residential, and to actually rezone this as business. Grove Properties is not looking to rezone this area here to business. It can remain residential. It is their parking field. They have no options to rezone or otherwise expand the shops in this area, and it's certainly not feasible with the amount of acreage that's available for parking. So this is really the only opportunity that Grove has to expand and to rezone in this location. You can see the property line is here. Again, this is the church parking lot and the church building here to the east. So you can see the difference in location, and I have those dimensions too, if that's something that that we need to can certainly discuss about. Another element that we heard from the planning board was the need for Grove Properties to reach out to the neighbors and talk to the abutters. And to that end, I wanted to come back to you and report that in fact has been done quite significantly. My client, Steve Walker, did go door to door, actually to meet neighbors and whatnot, explain with site plans in hand about what was going on. A mailing letter has also gone out to all the abutters and parties of interest in the area, explaining what is being anticipated, as well as a site plan. And I think there's been a number of marketing materials that have been distributed throughout the town in certain locations of gathering, Starbucks and whatnot. So there has been a significant attempt to get the word out, but also to have a dialogue and get some feedback as to what the neighbors are concerned. At one point when there was some discussion about some sound issues with some of the equipment on Max Burger. That is in the process of being addressed, and the dialogue that my client has had with those abutters has been very favorable, certainly, and it looks like that issue there is being resolved. So I did wanted to report that to you as well at this juncture. This is the proposed development as it stands now. And one of the things before we get too far into this document is I did want to reiterate what Bruce had said. This is the beginning of a process. We have created a schematic layout, if you will, that certainly does work as far as parking, square footage of the existing and the proposed. However, we realize that there's going to be a process once, if in fact this project goes forward, both with planning and zoning and other groups to review the site, make sure it works for stormwater, traffic, access, all of those elements. But for now, taking the information that we have, we've put together a parking layout. As had been mentioned, this does satisfy the existing parking requirements in the town of Long Meadow by 100%. It adds an additional 139 cars. It basically includes 21,096 square feet of new retail. The existing food service, professional bank office, and all those spaces do remain, as we had mentioned previously. One of the things I would like to, and I can kind of zoom in here a little bit. This is the proposed addition that we're looking to construct. It does have a new slipway from Bliss Road that brings you right in and aligns you with the drive-through, which goes behind the CVS and is actually located back here in the back where the pharmacy is located. So that does certainly create an ease of access that brings you in and out of the property to access the drive-through. We are putting 63 additional parking spaces in front of the CVS, as well as this Tenant B and Tenant A that we're proposing in this area. So we have greatly increased the parking field around the CVS, where the former CVS is right now. I'll just scroll to that area. You can see this is a fairly tight area, but we have greatly modified the circulation through this parking, so you no longer have the dead-end corridors that you had previously. We're able to get an additional 7 parking spaces in this area, which is certainly a benefit to these tenants. And we would imagine that CVS would become a retail tenant, which would be a less intensive tenant as far as number of trips and parking than what we would see from something like a CVS. If I continue down to the west of the site, in this area where Max Burger is and Bertucci's, we were able to get an additional 34 parking spaces. And I think that's really important because that's where the spaces matter. That's really where we want to have the additional parking. They service these restaurants quite well. And then down at the end of the site, through reconfiguring this area, we've picked up an additional 31 spaces of parking. What's unique about this is The ability to create this development here has allowed some domino effects to occur, allowing us to do some restriping, allowing us to do a little bit of shifting in some entries that took care of some dead space. So it does create a domino effect that kind of marches down the site and allows us to alleviate some of the parking issues that were otherwise experienced in this area. And I will say, the desire to hit 100% as far as the parking requirements of Longmeadow are concerned is something that that Grove Properties takes very seriously. They do understand the parking issues that are currently there, but there's also a desire to maintain the farmer's stand, the farmer's mart that's there now, as well as continue to have the parking on the west end of the site available to be serviced by the soccer fields. And by making these changes, that allows that to continue to happen. And I think that's good from a good neighbor perspective, as well as how the center has been typically used in the past historically. That'll be allowed to continue even with this new development that's being proposed.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's see, I guess I could begin by asking, do any members of the board have any questions at this point?
Yeah, Bruce, I'll start
Questions
with.
or comments?
Yeah, just real quickly, you addressed my comments about the farmer's market, which is important because that's sort of become, unfortunately, an icon. Whether you like it or not, it has become an icon. It is successful.
I do like it.
Oh, good. Well, there you go. So I'm glad to hear that continues going forward. I will remind you that the parking on the westerly side is, I think, still mandated under agreement with the town of Longmeadow. So you're actually improving that situation, but that's, just to clarify, it's not a convenience. I think it was a mandate by the original special
I do
permit.
understand that, too.
Because the fact that I didn't realize that you have all this residential zoned area that you have actually asphalt and parking on, so that must have been from that original special permit, because today I don't believe it's permitted to have parking on residential areas unless it's been issued by a special permit.
Well, that bylaw was actually...
Would it predate the bylaw?
Well, this predated that bylaw.
Okay.
What I was about to say was that bylaw was,
Okay.
I guess, inspired by this.
Oh, okay.
So it wouldn't happen again.
And then,
Yeah, my understanding there was a variance or a special permit that
Right.
was given back in, before we owned the property.
yeah, so I have that whole file right here.
I'm not suggesting
Yeah.
that it's illegal. I'm just,
Yeah.
it now clearly couldn't be done.
So I'll ask you, so to play the devil's advocate. So I think you said the cascading effect of the new site will improve parking throughout the site. My question is, so there's no possibility this parking could have been rearranged on the existing site today without the new building and made more convenient and still met the parking requirements?
Some of it could be, certainly. Some of it is as simple as restriping. However, some of it is a little more involved as far as shifting entrances. There's some significant work going on to make this happen. So probably maybe 75%, 60 to 75% of the gains could be gotten, yes.
Okay. All right, and finally, I'm just going to make a general comment again, which I've made at every hearing, and that is that this, again, is a public hearing on a zoning change. We're talking specifically about the request to change a parcel of property from residential to business. Technically, once town meeting votes on that and accepts it, anything can go in on this site in a way of business. However, it does have to go before the planning board with the site and design review process. So from the beginning, this is why it was so important that we asked Grove Properties to come up with a real thought of what they concretely want to do with this. And this project is fairly, like 70%, 80% complete. If it goes forward if town meeting accepts the zoning change, we go forward with this with site and design. I know Grove wants to move relatively quickly with this, so there's not going to be any hocus pocus where you're going to change designs or rearrange the site from what you've presented here. And that's an important thing for public trust, that they understand that.
Yeah, you have controls in place, Walter, so I wouldn't be able to do that without the board seeing it, and the zoning board and the planning board both seeing that.
Okay. So basically, tonight, people who want to talk, Bruce, I think should really address the fact of whether they want to see a change from a residential empty lot, which exists now, to this business use or to some other use. I think we can trust going forward that the plan presented here will be the one that would come forward if this zone change happens at town meeting. It would go forward, and we would work on this obviously to make sure the abutters and neighbors are all addressed and concerned. So those are my
That is correct too.
Those are my comments.
Do either of you have any questions or comments?
I do. I appreciate Grove increasing the parking spaces, as we talked about for the last meeting, I think 2 meetings ago. I had some grave concerns about the number of parking spaces because when people go into CVS, they seem to congregate in 4 lanes of parking. And yes, there's lots of parking spaces to the left, but most people don't use that. Seem to have solved most of the parking problems. Concern that I still have is the amount of traffic flow that's going to occur with the new stores going in. Not at this meeting, but the next one for site review. At that point, will you be able to provide some information to us as to your anticipation of the number of increased vehicles? How many extra vehicles are going to be coming in? Will you be able to do that the next meeting?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would think that's something that you're going to require. So I figured, if we get this rezoned, we're going to have to show you a traffic study, is what I'm assuming.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment or a question?
Sure, I think
yes.
I think they have to come up to the microphone,
Actually,
Steve.
perhaps
You guys will have to.
Yep.
How do you want to do this?
I guess you probably need, or at least one of you needs to get up.
I'll move aside for the moment.
How about Matt stays and then, all right.
Matt, there you go. Thank you.
Yes, if you have a comment, just because tonight's meeting is somewhat unusually being televised, so I'd like people to speak into the microphone. Could you please identify yourself?
Yes, my name is Dan O'Malley. I live at 68 Fairhill. Just a couple of procedural questions. At town meeting, is this zoning change subject to a simple majority affirmative vote, or is it subject to a third?
It would require a two-thirds vote.
It does require a two-thirds.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Second of all, if I might ask a question of the Grove people, the letter to the parties of interest, how many letters were sent, and when were they sent?
Could you speak louder, please?
Yes. Regarding the letters of the party of interest, how many letters were sent, and when were they sent?
What we actually did, if I may, is we contacted the town tax office, and they provided us with a list of abutters and parties of interest within 300 feet of the property, which I believe is what is required or standard. We did talk about we worked through a ruling that, in fact, this project does not need to have a formal letter go out to abutters or parties of interest. It's part of the process as far as a legal element of this warrant solicitation is concerned. But nevertheless, we did send that letter out, and I believe it went from our office to the individuals. I believe there are 39 butters and parties of interest, and I will check on the date of the letter, but I believe it was about a month ago this went out.
It was October 9th.
October 9th? Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then one final question I might have the board. It was indicated that currently Grove is 4 spaces short of requirements.
That's correct. However, they were given a variance.
They were given a
the
variance
ZBA.
for that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Bruce, can we speak in support or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Any comments,
yes,
please?
Either way. You can say this is wonderful. You can say this is horrible.
Sure.
Whatever you like.
We have till 10 o'clock.
But not on this.
Good evening. My name is David Appleman, 226 Converse Street, Long Meadow.
I'm here this evening to voice my support in favor of this plan. Just get my glasses for a minute. For various reasons. The plan increases the number of parking spaces at the shops. We all know that. With the addition of the 2 new restaurants over the past few years, parking seems to be at a premium, and this plan should ease that burden, increasing the number of overall parking spaces. The current internal traffic pattern at the shops is challenging as well. The plan that's being presented provides better traffic flow into, out of, and within the parking areas of the shops. The project continues the ownership's vision of being able to attract quality national boutique retailers who want to be part and be in Long Meadow because this is their customer base. The plan is in keeping with the town's long-range master plan to identify opportunities to increase tax revenues for the town. That is nearly fully built out. And lastly, the owners decided to move forward with this project. To present their plans to the town, they hired Phase Zero, one of the more qualified architect groups in the region, whose expertise includes the development of high-end retail centers. And for these reasons, I support the zone change and hope you do as well.
Thank you.
Are there any, yes?
Bill Hoff, 24 Pinewood Hills. I also support this project. I actually am one of the abutters. I hate to say it, I think I'm probably now the longest abutter to the Long Meadow shops. Most of my neighbors are new since then. But I really think that in my 20-plus years of living there, they really are good neighbors. There's been issues. We've gone through a number of zoning hearings, a number of parking hearings, and there's been issues. But the one thing that I've always said about Grove Properties, and Steve in particular, he's been very responsive. Whenever I've had to call him about an issue, whether it be, I think the most, I probably haven't called him in 5 years, but when the sweepers start sweeping the parking lot at 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday mornings, he does tell me they're not allowed to do that, and it gets corrected. So I think they are good neighbors. They've been, they're great for the town. I think, as long as we keep that church there, have that buffer till we get to the residential areas, I think this is a great project. I think it's a good use of the space, and I support it.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Yes?
My name's Donald Lipo. I live at 925 William Street, which is across from the church. I don't know if they made any studies with the police department to find out how many accidents are occurring on that corner almost daily. They talk about parking spaces and cars, but they never mention the extra traffic on the street that's going to be created by all these extra parking spots. I think the whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense. We live in a residential area. We have nice homes over there. I don't see the point in disrupting our way of life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any, yes? Oh, excuse me, just before you speak, just in regard to the previous gentleman's comments, I think was alluded to in some of the comments earlier, if this does pass, the proposal will have to go through site and design review, and the board would definitely be looking at traffic patterns, and the police and also fire department would also have input into the proposed new construction, or input into our study of the proposed new construction. Excuse me.
Oh, sure. My name is Brian Case. I used to live in town. We live in Summers now, but I have a business in the Long Meadow shops right above Bank of America, so that's the east side, I guess, of the center. I guess I'm here in support of the project. I think there's quite a few benefits. We already talked about parking. I think there's an opportunity here to reconfigure the entrances, which I see as a big problem. I hear from clients quite often that they're having a hard time parking in front of my office, and it's not so much that there's not parking, it's that you get stuck when you first pull into the center. So I think reconfiguring that is a big deal. My business is a financial planning business, so we have clients from people with kids to elderly folks, and I guess the other thing I'm really looking forward to is having a drive-through for the CVS. I think not only is it stuck in the middle of the center, which creates all this parking, but people are used to being able to drive through the pharmacy now. And I didn't realize until recently how often folks have to go to the pharmacy, until my father-in-law got sick. And I don't know what you call it, the tray of pills that he has to go refill every time he goes to the doctor and every time insurance tells him it's time. He's going to CVS, to me, it seems like daily. So if we can have that in our town, instead of him having to go over to East Longmeadow or Springfield or wherever he's going to do that, I think it would be a big improvement for our little town.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes?
Bruce, if I may too, I think the board at one point asked us what percentage of users of a pharmacy would use the drive-through, and we do typically see that to be about 25%. So that would be mothers with children in the car and elderly and whatnot who would use the drive-through rather than parking and going into the center. Did want to come back with that.
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Anna Facenti, 234 Redfern Drive. I don't really have an opinion as for or against at this point. My concern is mostly safety. I have children that attend Blueberry Hill, and with CVS being going to be towards the end and a new entranceway, I'm wondering if there's any talk about any safe crossing guards. Currently, there's one at the corner of Redfern and Frank Smith. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they did take it away last year, the afternoon crossing guard. So I'm worried with the additional traffic at CVS at the end. Is there any discussion about having any crossing guards at that new entranceway? Because there's a lot of children attend Blueberry that way.
Do you know if the current crossing guards, I mean, obviously they're all over town, do you know if they're employed by the police or by the school department?
Unfortunately, I do not know that.
Or if they're free volunteers?
Unfortunately, I do not know that. I know that there's one at the corner, and I know last year he was not doing it in the afternoon. He may be there now in the afternoon, I'm not sure, but I just think that's something that needs to be addressed because there's a lot of kids that ride their bikes and walk in that area. And that gentleman that was right, there is heavy traffic as far as car accidents in that corner section. So I hope that somebody would take that into consideration. Additional entranceways needs to be additional crossing guards, at least in the morning and the afternoon.
I think especially where the age of the kids that are biking.
Well, it's an elementary school, so they're all 11 and under.
Yeah, I was amazed at. I saw some kids that looked to be about 6 and 8 biking from school.
Absolutely.
And they're not paying attention to signs.
They're not,
They just
and I
got
think
their
it's
heads
a real
down
issue.
And they're just going ahead.
Yep.
And so I think that's a valid point. Thank you for bringing it.
I can add to that too. I put up an image on the screen of what's a raised crosswalk area, and this is what we intend to do at the entrances to the shops, and I can show you where these are. But these are traffic calming devices. It denotes where the crossing happens. It's usually a paving pattern. It is raised, as you can see, and it does slow the traffic down. Makes it a lot easier for pedestrians to use the sidewalk. And we would actually be looking at employing that device at all the entrances, at the slipway, over in this area at the main entrance. At this main entrance, you can see here the raised walk-in pavers, and actually down here as well. So we are certainly thinking about that. We do want to be able to maintain the pedestrian flow, both along the sidewalk and into the shops. We have used these before with great effect. They do certainly help in vehicles exiting and entering and being able to slow and calm traffic. So we certainly are looking at that as well.
Bruce, I will again remind the public here, people watching on television tonight, if, again, this project goes forward, if the town votes to change this zone, in the site and design process, we can de-intensify the scope of this project. I mean, when you work with a developer, say the traffic study, I mean, will definitely contribute these comments made tonight about traffic, and I drive every day through Redfern and Williams Street and Frank Smith, so I'm very familiar with that intersection, and it is dangerous, and that's part of the process we would go forward with, and if information and data comes back and shows that the traffic patterns will be similar to what we've seen from the studies for if a casino goes in Springfield, for example, then there would be a lot of changes have to be made to the site. And that would happen, of course, after a town meeting approval for zoning change.
Yes. Are there any other comments or questions from the public? Okay, well, then...
Bruce.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sure,
I
come on
didn't see you. Certainly, come up.
My husband spoke earlier, and we live
Could you identify yourself, please?
Pardon?
Could you identify?
I'm May Lipo. I live at 925 Williams Street,
Okay.
directly across from the church. And since we've lived there the past 10 years, I certainly haven't seen any improvements in the traffic flow. It's terrible, difficult to get. Sometimes I have to go all the way around just to get over to Frank Smith to get into my driveway, which my driveway is on Frank Smith. I don't think the tone of the shops has helped any. We have now 3 places at the shops where people go to drink. They all serve alcohol. We have the Hukilau. And I just don't think with all the traffic, I see these kids from my window every day, back and forth the street. And I think there's plenty going on. I really don't think it's necessary. And I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you, May.
Thank you. I would note liquor licenses do not fall under the planning board. That falls under the board of the select board.
Right. You made a point. No, that's right.
But yes. Well, okay, yes.
My name is John Benoit. I live at 33 Severn Street, and I am also a tenant in the building. I have a small office on the other side, the far left side of the building, so it's the western side, up above United. And I'm a commercial real estate broker, and I do work all around New England. And this is my second time seeing this proposal. It's my first time seeing it large. And I just want to say off the top of my head that it's bringing the space into modern time, and it's also bringing the space into its intensified usage. To have that pharmacy with a drive-through on the end is going to completely change the foot traffic in the center of the center. Getting rid of the dead ends is going to improve the traffic flow. And it just strikes me that there's an improvement being made on this site, that it'd be wonderful to see if a corresponding improvement was made off the site that was kind of, and I think which some people are referring to, which is the traffic on William Street and on Bliss Street. But I also want to say, as a customer and as a resident, I find over the past 4 or 5 years, traffic has really slowed down when those crosswalks went up, where people stop for pedestrians. I don't know what other people's experience is, but I see people driving, looking for people coming across, and the traffic isn't 30 miles an hour. It is slower. So I think drivers are aware of it. This project, on the face of it, what would drive this is CVS, because of its increased use, wanting to be in a space that they can more functionally service that use. That use is the residents. That use is the town. But as I say, it's quite an improvement on the site. It's a little harder and more time-consuming for a town to make the improvements off the site, but I think that effort has been made, and something as simple as crosswalks that we have now has made an improvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else? Okay, well, at this point, does anyone else on the board, or anyone on the board want to make any other comment? Okay, then at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing on this proposed bylaw amendment. The board, prior to the town meeting, will be voting whether or not to recommend it to the town meeting and giving that recommendation at the town meeting. The town meeting, of course, is free to either agree with the board or disagree with the board. As I indicated earlier, a zoning bylaw amendment requires a 2/3 vote at town meeting. I think probably it's safe to say that almost everyone in town is familiar with this site, and I would assume that their experience with it will inform how they vote at the November town meeting. Anyway, we have 3 other amendments which we have to deal with, so we're now going to go on to the next amendment, which will be, I believe, Article 13 at the town meeting. Article 13? Yes. Yes. I believe on the warrant this will be the rezoning of the property I believe is going to be Article 12 on the town meeting warrant. This is, at least in the draft warrant, this is Article 13. This is to add the following section to the zoning bylaws, uses in residence zones. And the proposed addition to the bylaws would state accessory uses, again in the residential zone, shall not include the parking of any vehicle during the period of 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. other than on a paved area, and such paved area shall not exceed 20% of the area bounded by the side lot lines, the front of the residential structure, and the street line. This bylaw is being proposed because actually both the planning board and I believe the select board and some of the other agencies in town have been getting complaints about people parking cars or storing cars on their front lawn. Originally, the bylaw was, or the proposed bylaw, I guess in an original draft, basically just said that it would be illegal to park them on the non-paved portion of the front lawn, or the front yard, I guess I should say. However, the issue was then raised, I think legitimately. Some people in town live on streets which are quite busy and aren't really designed for street parking. Sometimes some homeowners hold parties and they allow their guests to park on their lawn rather than in the street. I would note our bylaws already forbid overnight street parking. And if you, I don't know if you read the Longmeadow News, the police report, you may have noted that recently the police have begun cracking down on people who are parking overnight. Essentially, there would be 2 ways to deal with this, let's say, exceptions to this proposed bylaw. One would be to require people to go to the police department and get a permit to park overnight on their lawn. The other way, which is the way we chose to suggest, is to essentially ban the parking between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. On the front lawn. If someone is throwing a party, presumably the cars would be gone from the front lawn, but between those hours, and if any cars that are being parked on the lawn during those hours, presumably are largely in storage or whatever. We don't. By suggesting this bylaw, the suggestion is not that it's fine to park on your front lawn the other 19 hours of the day, but because really you shouldn't be doing it in any event. But this, by simply banning it overnight, we felt that this would prevent people from storing their cars on their front lawns. Also, the part about the requirement that the cars be parked on a paved area, and the paved area should not exceed 20% of the front yard area, was essentially to prevent people from just paving their entire front lawn and then parking all the cars on it. I guess we'll begin by asking, does anyone on the planning board want to say anything or make a comment? Or
Bruce, yeah, I'll give the background on Articles 13 through 15. Basically originated at the request of the town manager. Formed a land use subcommittee, and basically we met several times this summer. It was a vetting process from the building commissioner. We have a member of the zoning board of appeals, members of the planning board, town manager, and town council Dave Martell. We sat down and went through a laundry list of what the building commissioner sees as some of the biggest problem areas of enforcement in Long Meadow that are based on neighbor complaints and pretty much are unenforceable under the current bylaws. Out of that, there was a very long list, and we didn't want town meeting to go on for 3 days like it can in Amherst, Mass. So we reduced it down to some really simple items, and so that's where the origins of 13 through 15 came from. Specifically, Article 13, which is about the parking, stems from some real abusive residents in town, a few, not many, that have actually parked their cars on their front lawn and have for sale signs on them. There's some blatant abuses of the bylaw, and these folks are actually very, very determined to continue doing this because they feel they're in their rights of the law to do this. And the neighbors have complained. So this is something that developed first as a general ban on parking on a front lawn. And the planning board looked at this back at our last meeting in the beginning of October and realistically said, look, if you have a period of 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. where you can't have your cars on a lawn, that's a good enough time to convince somebody who's going to have 5 or 6 or 7 vehicles continually on a front yard is going to get the message not to do it, because he'll have to every night between 1 and 6 a.m. move the vehicles and then put them back at 7 a.m. Otherwise, the police department will be there to enforce it. So that's based the background on the 3 articles, how these originated, and then some little detail on Article 13.
Okay. Does anyone else on the board have any comments on this?
I just want to say, is Heather happy that you saw they included your comments? Yeah, that was very proactive of the town manager.
Well, the language is probably the best that we can get in this particular article. My concern is enforcement. Who's going to be there between 1 in the morning and 6?
Well, the police patrol at night as it is, and they are in fact charging a number of people with overnight street parking, which is also banned during these same 5 hours.
Oh, that makes sense then. Okay.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments by members of the public? Yes. Again, please go to the.
Come on up.
Come on up. Identify yourself and.
Mr. O'Malley.
Dan O'Malley, 68 Fair Hill, former resident of Long Meadow Street. The question I have for you, does this include parking on the town-owned tree belts? Because I've noticed over the past several years that there's a lot of parking on the tree belts, and I was told there was no bylaw against that. Does this article contemplate that?
I thought there already was, too.
I would say that it would, because the tree belt is not paved, certainly.
But it's not a front lawn, certainly. It acts as one in many cases.
Yes, except the area that's covered by the bylaw is, the words front lawn don't appear in the bylaw.
Oh, okay.
It's the area bounded by the side lot lines, the front of the residential structure, and the street line.
Yeah, the street line would be the street,
okay.
not the. Yeah,
Good.
you're right.
So,
This would address that.
this would address that.
Thanks, Dan, for that's a good point.
Thanks, Mr. O'Malley.
I may have used the phrase front lawn because it's just in talking about it, it's hard not to, but technically that phrase is not in the proposed bylaw. Right. Okay. Are there any other questions? Yes. Sure.
Just a comment. Good evening. My name is John Smith. I live at 141 South Avenue in Long Meadow. I've been a resident here for well over 60 years. And again, the reason we're here tonight, and perhaps a lot of other folks, is to ban the parking on, on home front lawns and so on. Picture a situation where you've lived in a neighborhood for all of those years, and you've looked at a home that was a neighbor of yours that was absolutely pristine, well cared for, and then there's a change of ownership. And after that change of ownership, you see the property might get mowed 4 times a year if you're lucky. Then you've got bushes that are overgrown, and then the individual decides to go into a used car business, and you've got 4, 5, or 6 vehicles on the property day and night. We've experienced that probably for the last 2 or 3 years on South Avenue. And a term I think that I coined a long time ago was long ghetto, and that's what has happened to our end of the town because of lack of zoning laws that would prohibit that type of situation. So God knows, hopefully this thing will pass. Does this require a 2/3 majority as well, as far as the vote goes?
Yes, any changes to the
See,
zoning
my
laws
thunder is
requires
being
2/3.
expressed at the wrong people here. I need to
Well, no,
talk
this is
to
being televised as well, and I think
well,
you're
see,
just
I'm
warming up
glad
for
Channel
town meeting.
40 is gone because I had several outstanding warrants, and I didn't want reprisal from the guy on the street that I'm referring to here. But in any event, I guess we'll have to wait for the meeting and certainly go and vote. It's been a bad, bad situation, incredibly ridiculous.
Well, a number from various boards and officials in town have gotten complaints. The planning board itself has gotten a couple complaints, and that was why we
No, this particular situation, the guy was a former Marine, and believe me, he does not have any pride in himself or anything about his property. It's just ridiculous, totally. So thank you.
Thank you,
for
Mr.
your
Smith.
comments.
Okay. Are there any other? Yes.
Good evening. Don Campbell, 327 Maple Road. Maple Road, as everybody knows, is a great commuter pass-through. And with the trees on the tree belt, it's difficult to see down the road when you're backing out of your driveway. I would like to see, in addition to no parking on the tree belt and the front lawn, including parking on the apron as well to the driveway, that paved portion. Because here again, it's very difficult, if not dangerous, to try to back out of your driveway, especially during the commuter hours in morning and afternoon.
I thought there was something in the general bylaws about obstruction of sidewalks. Parking on.
We did address that where a neighbor was parking 5 or 6 cars in a double wide driveway, and they were blocking the sidewalk. So it was impossible for kids going to Wolf Swamp Road School from Maple Road, people walking their dogs in the morning and afternoon, elderly people walking. They had to go out and around into the street to get by. And that situation had been corrected, but that didn't address parking on the apron with the car almost extending out into the road. So if it's not in the bylaws, if you could include not parking on the apron as well, that would be a tremendous help. Thank you.
No, thank you, Don.
Thanks, Mr. Campbell.
Okay, are there any other? Yes.
Hi, I'm Warren Sheridan, 316 Longmeadow Street. I actually just had a definition question as far as paved area. What is and is not considered paved?
Well, I guess could you perhaps give an example of what in your mind is causing the confusion?
Okay, a dirt driveway.
Obviously a
driveway of gravel, as opposed to cement or asphalt, which I would certainly consider paved. I wouldn't consider someone's dirt or rock driveway necessarily considered paved. by definition.
So you're saying.
Which I have, which means I can't park at my house, so could cause me a problem.
Okay, well, I'm aware that not every driveway in town is paved, and I guess the intention is not to say you can't park in your driveway.
Obviously. I was just curious.
I guess you could say the intention was that the driveway shouldn't be more than 20% of the front area, however, but at one point in one of the earlier discussions at the meetings that were referenced by Mr. Gunn, there was some discussion of saying that the referring to the lawn, or what I call the lawn area, would have natural plant cover, and it got a little complicated. We may wish to consider adding a phrase or something to the bylaw or the proposed bylaw to cover unpaved driveways.
Yeah, because that is interesting. Now you're back into the definition of lawn as literally grass or natural landscaping, and to somehow accommodate for his case a dirt driveway, and there are plenty in town. And I don't know if the definition, I don't know if a compacted dirt driveway is considered a paved.
Well, I think part of the problem is that the only reason they're compacted is because the cars have been driving back.
Right, or they're ground. Usually they're compacted with they're packed down gravel and sand to make it compressed. I don't know if that's not considered paved though. It's dirt.
So I think we can.
That's something to consider. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Thank you.
That's why we have these public hearings, because again, we can't think of everything.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other comments on this proposed bylaw? Okay. Well, then I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this meeting that dealt with Article 13. Article 14 is essentially adding a definition of family. I actually happen to have 2 copies of that. I don't know if I have enough for everyone here. I would note that I don't know if this is the final draft or not, but on the copy of the warrant that we were sent, this is Article 14. Yes, give it to the press. Yeah, you have that. I gave you one. There was the intention was to, because the town bylaws do not have a definition of family in them, there was fear, particularly in terms of if the casino goes through, there may be hot bedding with a lot of people sharing the home. I mean, I believe the phrase hot bedding comes because the bed never cools off, because the day workers sleep in it at the nighttime and the nighttime workers sleep in it during the daytime. We were sent a proposed definition of family, which is actually printed in the warrant. However, I think it's largely incomprehensible and does not at all work. Actually, there's a note under planning board comment. It says unanimously do not like the language as presented here. So what I suggested is, so essentially we were invited to replace the language, and what I'm suggesting the definition should be, and we'll discuss this, would be family. An individual residing in one dwelling unit or a group of persons related by marriage, civil union, blood, adoption, guardianship, or other duly authorized custodial relationship, residing together in one dwelling unit, or a group of unrelated individuals, not to exceed 4, residing cooperatively in one dwelling unit, or a group of individuals, regardless of relation, residing in congregate or similar group housing for the elderly or disabled, in halfway houses or in other group residential uses authorized and operated under state and federal law. Now, I would note that I guess a couple months ago, there was a great deal of furor in town over some neighbors who were upset that a halfway house, or excuse me, not a halfway house, a group home was going into their street, or onto their street. And there was a lot of I don't know if maybe exaggeration to say yelling and screaming, but there was a lot of very active discussion as to whether or not such things were allowed in town and so forth. There were also discussion as to whether or not this particular project could be considered an educational institution, which many people thought was a stretch. I would note that the Long Meadow bylaws, as an allowed use, an explicitly allowed use in the residential zone, have always included convalescent homes, which I would suggest is, if anything, probably a better description of the facility that's here. And this bylaw has absolutely not, and there I believe are 8 or 9 of those types of homes in town. This bylaw has absolutely nothing to do with them or any attempt to ban them or limit them or whatever. In fact, as noted, it explicitly says that it would not affect, or I should say, a group of individuals, regardless of relation, residing in congregate or similar group housing for the elderly or disabled, in halfway houses or in other group residential uses authorized and operated under state and federal law, would be an allowed use in the town. As basically, for the most part, they already are an allowed use in town. So I do just want to emphasize this has absolutely nothing to do with that. However, in any event, this is I guess the proposed bylaw that we're dealing with right now. Would anyone on the planning board like to comment on it?
Yeah, I like Bruce's proposal. Article 14 originated as a paste and cut from the town of Ludlow. It wasn't our doing, it was recommended from a member of our committee. Name will not be mentioned, but that's where this originated from. I guess whatever we discuss tonight and whatever we recommend, I guess we'll have to go on the floor as an amendment, and that goes back to Article 13 too. So.
I would imagine that at the town meeting, copies of if we decide to recommend this, I would imagine that copies of what you're holding will be passed out to people as they enter the meeting, so they know what they're voting on. That sort of thing has been done in the past and at other meetings when there have been post printing of the warrant changes. Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. I think.
See what the other consensus is here. Don or Heather, do you have any comments or questions?
I like this one much better than the other proposal. I think it's just more concise and clear in what it's getting at. So.
Okay. Does anyone? Oh, I'm sorry, Don.
I'd like to raise the same question I did in a past meeting. If there are homes where there are couples that are not married, let's say one's divorced or they're both divorced and they live together and they each bring their kids together, what if the number exceeds 4? Will that pose a problem with this?
I don't believe. Well, first of all, the children would be related to the parent that's bringing the children there. So basically, you'd have, assuming they're just living together with nothing else, I guess that would be the 2 unrelated individuals living in the house. the children would be related to, would not be unrelated because they're related to their parents.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Dave, you want to say something?
Oh.
David Lavenberg, 58 Maple Road. So I read this. I actually got a look at this earlier in the email. Here's my question, Bruce. What does residing cooperatively mean?
I suppose it would be two people get together to buy or rent a house and share building expenses who are not in a let's say romantic relationship, for lack of a better phrase.
Well, could it be 4 kids who are in college who rent a house?
Yes, under this bylaw, yes. Although legally they'd all have to be adults, I would imagine, or at least, I mean, as you're certainly aware, I mean, minors can't enter into contracts. I would note that there actually are, at least in my general neighborhood, there was a house that was occupied by, under that, I don't know how many there were, but was occupied on that basis.
So does that would naturally encourage a use of residential property for rental purposes only in the town? Would you agree?
I don't think so, because, I mean, first, nothing is legally preventing it now. I mean, you can rent a house, you can't rent apartments in town.
Right.
I mean, this limits it to 4. You could have now you could have a half dozen college kids rent a house together, or a dozen, whatever.
You mentioned in your email that you might consider lowering the number 4 too.
We could also lower it from 4 to 2 or 3 or something.
I don't have any objection to this. I read that and I said, I don't know what that means exactly, and I wanted to get some clarification, and you can understand why.
Yeah,
because
right.
if Paul issues a cease and desist, guess who's going to have to interpret this? So.
Yeah.
It certainly seems reasonable to me. I know you didn't make it out of cloth. I was able to find it, I think, at least in one other town, some, if not identical language. So
well, it's very similar
pretty
to Amherst.
Yeah,
right. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's something that's been tested in other towns. And
no, I have no doubt that this
scrutiny
would pass muster with the Attorney General. Yeah. The question is, do we want to do it?
And what was the, refresh my recollection, guys, what was the reason, and not to exclude gals, but
I'll be a guy.
But you weren't at the initial land use meeting. Mm-hmm. Why did we want to have a definition for family? Simply because it's not in the bylaw now?
I think there's a certain, I believe it was the select board that was pushing it.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain fear of fallout from if it passes, from casinos or the casino, I should say.
And wasn't there also a home in town that was rented beyond its capacity, I believe, and somehow there was no enforcing mechanism to control it? Somewhere down off of Long Meadow Street by the old community market area there, somewhere there was a problem.
Well, I guess my summary point is I always believe that a little bit more definition's better. The bylaw doesn't have the provision, so it seems to me like it'd be a good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Lavenberg.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. Are there any other comments by the public? Nope. Any further comments by the board? No. Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing on proposed Article 14, which is to add a definition of family. Now, the final proposed bylaw is on the warrant as Article 15, which was.
Can we open the hearing, please?
Oh, he's just closing that item on the article.
We're still in the public hearing.
Public hearing's still open. He's just closing that article.
We're just going on to the next article.
Yeah, it's still.
You have to open up that part because you did it for the other two.
Okay, well, I thought I was starting to say the next item was Article 15.
You didn't say open the hearing.
Okay, we will open the magic words. We will open the hearing on Article 15, which is another proposed amendment to the zoning bylaws, which was, I believe, largely being sought by the Zoning Board of Appeals. It has to do with the current language in the bylaw says that a pre-existing non-conforming use or structure may not be extended, altered, or changed except by a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The proposed extension, alteration, or change of a non-conforming use or structure must meet the following criteria. 1, the proposed extension, alteration, or change must not increase the nonconformity. And 2, if the proposed extension, alteration, or change complies with Section 1, in other words, meaning it doesn't increase the nonconformity, the ZBA must determine whether or not the proposed extension, alteration, or change would be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing use or structure. Now, that's the current language in the bylaw. The proposal is to delete that and replace it with language which would say, a pre-existing non-conforming use or structure may not be extended, altered, or changed except by a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeal. The proposed extension, alteration, or change of a non-conforming use or structure must meet the following criteria. 1, the proposed extension, alteration, or change may increase any nonconformity as long as the proposed extension, alteration, or change would not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing use or structure. Let's see. Would you like to, I guess, briefly address that, Mr. Lavenberg?
Just for the record, this was brought forward by David Lavenberg, was one of the members of this land use subcommittee, and it has been an issue with the Zoning Board of Appeals. And
which Mr. Lavenberg sits on.
Which is chair, yes.
And chair.
Okay. Just by very brief way of background, it's always rubbed me the wrong way that we have a provision or a bylaw that we do not refer to. It was interpreted to be inconsistent with state law, and for the benefit of the public that's here tonight, state law really preempts local law. We have to be in compliance with state law, so we have a provision in our bylaw which essentially moot. It's taking up space. It's not. It doesn't have any general import. So what we did in drafting this provision was to adopt the what we believe to be the correct and current interpretation of the mandate under state law, and to adopt the current practice of the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the proposed amendment, which Bruce read into the record, is actually the standard that the board is currently using, and there would be no variation from the board's current practices, regardless of whether or not this provision is adopted. But it does make some sense to have it because it's what we're doing.
Question, Don?
I have a question about the article. What happens if someone has a stone wall, rock wall, that's deteriorated over a couple decades, and they want to bring someone in to fix it? Is that an alteration?
Where is the stone wall?
I'll give you an example. Mo, who owns Brightwood Pharmacy, He has a stone wall on Brightwood Hardware Store. He has in the front of his home on Silver Birch Road, just before the town property. He's got a stone wall that goes maybe 20 feet, 30 feet. That was in deterioration, and it was an eyesore. So he had some gentlemen come and fix the rocks, and now they're nice. Now, is that an alteration?
Well, Don, if the context is it the alteration within the meaning of this provision? I assume that's where you're going? Okay, right. Then let's set up a few predicates. The first predicate is that this provision isn't going to come into play unless there is a pre-existing non-conforming use or structure. So in your hypothetical to me, it's not a hypothetical, in your example to me, you haven't told me whether or not there's a pre-existing non-conforming use. Because if there's not, then the zoning board isn't going to get involved. And I would go as far to tell you that there are plenty of examples where there are pre-existing non-conforming uses that don't end up with a trigger for the requirement of a special permit in town. So I can't fully answer your question without you giving me a little bit more facts.
Okay.
Okay.
It's non-conforming use, and it dates back to probably the 80s or 70s. And so something like that, if it falls apart, is fixing alteration.
Well, how is the wall non-conforming? What do you know how it's non-conforming?
I would think something that's about 5 feet, 6 feet tall. 5 feet tall is non-conforming. I think we have in the bylaws, isn't there a limitation on the height of a wall? I forget what it is.
Well, is this wall specifically important for retaining? Is it also
yes, it is.
Issues of terrain, and so you have hardship there in terms
I don't know, I think maybe I'm missing something, but I think the point of the question was more just the general thing. If something is simply being reconstructed, more or less presumably exactly as it was before, but now it'll be new, is that considered an alteration, or does an alteration require that some changes be made? The wall's a foot higher or a foot shorter, or whatever.
Don, if you're just asking if it's being reconfigured to be essentially the same, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Back to new.
Rehabilitated?
Yeah, rehabilitated.
Yeah, I can't imagine why that wouldn't be allowed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also with fences, I understand that if there's a pre-existing fence that predates the bylaw, and yes, it's vinyl and it sits out in the front yard, and it's non-conforming by today's bylaw, it's still permitted to be rebuilt and repaired.
Yeah, let me give you the biggest example. The house that's as you enter town on Long Meadow Street from Enfield. If you're driving into Long Meadow, you know what I'm talking about, the big house that's on the right-hand side? Yeah. Okay. So we had quite a, to use Bruce's word, furor at a hearing once about the demolition of that house.
That's the Kane property?
Say again.
Right, I think it was the Canes.
Yes, that's exactly what it was, Walter. And complete demolition and then reconstruction of that house. And what state law permits, as interpreted by town council and the zoning board of appeals, is not only were they able to simultaneously demolish and reconstruct that house, but they were able to make it bigger. So that goes to the point in the bylaw as we're currently using it that says a pre-existing non-conforming use or structure can be extended. Extended as in made larger, as long as it's not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing use. So you can imagine what the objections were. Oh, the house is too big, it's inconsistent with the neighborhood. And my question to the person who was complaining was, well, how is the neighborhood consistent now? What size are the homes? What's their current configuration? Are they Victorian? Are they colonial? What are they? How far are they set off from the lot? Of course, the point was that there is no consistency, so there was no issue of uniformity. And it was difficult to say that it would really be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood in the absence of that type of uniformity. And that was primarily the reason, in addition to the board's general practice of allowing people to grow into their homes and to make the maximum use of their property. That was the primary reason why we allowed it. So I think that kind of answers your question. When we talk about alterations, that's the biggest alteration you can make.
Okay.
I hope that's satisfactory.
It is.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else?
Are there any questions or comments from the public or diminishing public?
Thank you, Dave.
Okay. No. Are there any other comments by the board?
Nope.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to close the public hearing on the proposed Article 15. And let's see. It's now about 8:26, I guess. And I believe we are also posted, in addition to the public hearing, we're also posted for a meeting tonight, which would mean that the board, if it wishes, can vote on these four proposed, or first can discuss these four proposed bylaws and vote on whether or not to recommend them to the, yes?
You need to close the public hearing. You only close the public hearing for Article 15.
Okay, fine. I'll be closing the public hearing in its entirety. However, the public is welcome to wait, because our meetings are also open to the public.
Before everybody leaves, we all would like to thank you for sitting through the whole thing.
And the comments,
and the comments, some of which
right.
were
because
helpful.
Again, at town meeting, it's going to be a long night, and the moderator is going to, unless you've already made up your mind on voting on any of these issues, the moderator is hopefully going to be a little more restrictive and keep it to those, a few for and a few against. So we're hoping tonight with this televised broadcast, we can at least get this discussed and get your comments, which will be televised. People can at least think about it a little more, and so those who make comments at town meeting will be, educated and move the meeting along that night. So thank you again for coming.
We want to thank you, too, for giving us this forum.
You're welcome.
It worked out well. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'll now open the public meeting, our meeting. Now, I suppose we could just sort of take them one by one. The first item would be the proposed rezoning of property from residential to business by the Long Meadow Shops. How would the board like to handle that?
Well, I'm going to make a motion to recommend, so I'll put that motion on the table, to recommend that this proposed zoning change on the property as posted in the warrant, Article 12, is it? Article 12, yes. So I'm going to make a motion to recommend. Well, I'll just open the motion, you can second it, and then you can have discussion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. So now it's open for discussion.
I think some valid points were raised tonight, mainly about the traffic flow. The one entrance and exit that is closest to CVS is sometimes difficult to navigate. We have cars coming. We have cars coming up Williams. We have cars that are coming from next to the gas station, and we have cars that are going straight up Williams. We have cars that are coming out of the what I call the CVS driveway, and then the CVS exit, and they're all looking for the quickest spot to get in. And if we're going to be increasing the traffic flow, what kind of impact is that going to have on accidents? I don't know if that's going to be something that we're going to be able to resolve even at the time of site and design review. But I don't think that's what we're here to do tonight. We're here to talk about, do we think that it should be rezoned business?
Let me ask you this. I guess that's a good point, and the point being, is a zone change workable, fixable, and amenable to the town of Long Meadow? I mean, if you feel that even adding one little building is detrimental, then that's something we need to consider, because really that's what it's about. It's because it's forever. It's a zoning change is almost impossible to ever turn it back to residential. I don't see. I've never heard of that happening. So this is something that goes forward, and Bruce has always reminded us that we have to be very careful how we go forward with these zoning changes, because you can't predict what will happen in 20 years, 30 years on that piece of property.
I think we're the custodians in terms of bringing this to the town meeting.
Well, they're going to trust us, I hope. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, and I think it's up for the town to vote on. We still have the site and design review where we can delve into these issues more. But I think in terms of whether this becomes business, I'd like to pass it on to the town meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to. My reasons for recommending this are that I do think it's a workable plan, and that one thing you can do is you can you're in the bully pulpit at site and design review, and I believe that Long Meadow Shops has deep pockets, and they should probably pay and address traffic situations that are going to be obviously determined by a traffic study. I'm very concerned about the residents and the pedestrian traffic at Redfern and William Street, and perhaps they might offer to subsidize that crossing guard that I know the town of Long Meadow, which is strapped for cash, is the reason why that crossing guard is no longer there. But to
actually,
things like
does
that.
anybody, speaking of crossing, does anybody know who pays the crossing guard?
The police department budget.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
also, I mean, as I'm getting older, as we all are, it seems that as I'm getting older, I'm going more and more to the pharmacy. And so I think that the people that are going to be using the drive-up window, I suspect, just guessing, will be older than 40 years old. Right. And so let's say we get people that are 60, 70, I'm up there,
Well, it's also
so we get people that are 60.
Or mothers of young children would also be driving.
Yeah, but the point I'm getting at is they're now coming down, let's say, the CVS exit. When we get to site and design review, we can ask them, we can ask Grove, will you be having one-way signs perhaps to direct the traffic?
Absolutely.
But again, I think that's something for site and design.
We could actually require that.
We remember at the community market site, we actually reversed the ATM drive-through at that bank. We actually reversed the whole project.
We reversed the building.
The whole building was reversed because it became obvious that it was not amenable to the abutters. So that kind of authority carries a lot of weight. I'll also say I will not ever support another restaurant in that shopping center. I've had several residents in town approach me endorsing, we need another restaurant there. Absolutely not. First of all, that will, I believe, put them over the top on the parking requirements. They will require a special permit or a variance. And then furthermore, the trash, the noise, the traffic, and I would never support another restaurant. So I'm concerned what would go in the existing CVS. I understand it would be a retail store, but absolutely not. I think they're maxed, literally, no pun intended with Max Burger, but they are maxed out with the restaurants and food and beverage services at this time.
Call the question.
Okay, well, does anybody else want to make any other? I would just say that we do have, we'll vote in a moment, but I just wanted to say something. Obviously, we do have a lot of control on how assuming the town votes to allow it, we do have a great deal of control under site and design review as to how the traffic flow goes, whether there's a traffic problem in the street. I mean, there have been references to a lot of accidents there. I actually have not, I'm not doubting anything anybody said, but that generally, at least in the past, has not been cited as one of the hotspots for accidents in town. But obviously we need to look into that. We probably need to have, or will need to have, an independent traffic study done rather than one done by the developer, although they'll be the one paying for our independent study. Obviously, that's probably one of the best-known areas of town by pretty much everybody in town. So they're if they think this is going to be a disaster, I assume they'll vote no. If they think, yeah, this would be good, they'll vote yes.
Right.
And we'll see what develops. I would say, just speaking for myself, that had they not come up with the whatever, I guess 98 additional parking spaces, I probably would have voted against this. But they did come up with the 98 additional parking spaces. So what I thought at the time was the major issue, has been addressed to their credit. And while, of course, if the zone change goes through, they could say, well, surprise, we're going to build a bowling alley instead of CVS. I don't foresee that happening. So I would vote to endorse the zone change for the town meeting. So anyway, but I'll now, I guess, unless somebody else wants to say something.
I would just add that I also support the change. It wasn't really brought up tonight, but it's always mentioned the need for increased revenue in the town, and this is, we don't get too many opportunities to have a new source of additional revenue coming in, and this would provide that and would be helpful in that manner, which wasn't brought up. I know there is a lot of concerns about the traffic, but from my personal experience, a lot of traffic is from the shops, but it's also the high school is over here, people are getting to Blueberry. A lot of the traffic isn't just the shops, and they will have to do the traffic study, and that's a very expensive endeavor. So maybe doing that can help alleviate even some of the overall traffic not even caused by the shops. It may not, but it could have, maybe just changing a light sequence, just something, to help the situation.
Yeah, sure. Lane changes, whatever.
So I do support the change.
Okay, well, unless there are any further comments, I guess everyone in favor of recommending the zone change proposed in Article 12, please raise their hands. Okay, it will be recommended by a vote of 4-0. Okay, the next item was the overnight parking bylaw. I thought I had no problems with it, and I really don't. But however, the gentleman in the audience who raised the issue of my driveway isn't paved.
Warren.
Can we have the discussion after someone makes the motion?
All right, certainly. Okay, would anyone like to make a motion on Article 13?
Yeah, okay, I'll make a motion to recommend Article 13, although I would have probably want to move an amendment on this in a minute. But all right, so, okay, I'll make a motion to recommend Article 13 as proposed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Okay. Well, what I was going to say was, one of the reasons we hold these public hearings is you sometimes find something that you hadn't thought of. And the gentleman who said, my driveway is dirt, it isn't paved. What does this mean? I can't park on my own driveway?
We also had Don Campbell's comments about parking on the apron, which I'm not sure.
That I don't believe is going to be a problem as the bylaw is written. But
okay.
Some yards are almost all dirt.
Yes, that's also true.
How do we define a dirt driveway?
Do we define something as a path?
I suppose we could say that the driveway area is not. Well, just as the paved area was not supposed to exceed 20% of the front yard. I suppose you could say the dirt driveway is not supposed to exceed 20% of the front yard either.
I think we get into more problems with dirt.
Right.
Just because of the dirt lawns.
You gotta have a dirt lawn. Well,
and some people have gravel all over the place. But you could throw gravel if you wanted to. Paved or gravel driveway.
Well, I wish the building commissioner could have been here tonight.
I think town, based on the meeting that we had that this came out of, I think the suggestion was made that a gravel would be considered paved, that you can have gravel driveways, which I suppose also must exist in town in some places.
I'm not buying it. People get out of spending the money to pave by throwing gravel.
Oh, I've considered it, trust me.
So I think despite the limitations of this article, I think it's the best we can do right now.
Okay, I suppose someone could be forced to pave their driveway.
They can go for a variance. I think that it's well written, and I would support it as is.
That's true. There's always relief, through the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that process allows for these exceptions, which are more the exceptions than the rule.
As being someone who went through the variance process,
Uh-oh.
I mean, I know there is the process out there, but if this is their driveway and it's a gravel driveway, if you look at the criteria for the variance, they're very strict requirements. I think the fourth one is even kind of you're in this unusual circumstance.
The hardship one.
The hardship,
Yeah,
and I don't know what would put someone.
But that would usually, people think hardship means like, well, I'm a widow living on Social Security.
No, but it means you're
when it actually, which is absolutely not what it means. It means more like, you can't pave this because my front yard is all quicksand or something.
Yeah, I mean,
although you're presumably not going to be parking on that.
Yeah,
but,
I don't know. And I'm not saying that we need to change it, but I'm just saying to put it out there, it's a couple $100 for the application. In the actual instructions, I know the zoning board will require you to come out and have it marked by saying it's realistically $500 to $1,000 in a couple nights.
Well, that's true.
What would it cost to pave a driveway?
About $5,000.
Yeah.
Oh, that much?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I have to redo ours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say if you could do it for $1,000,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean,
well, that's
so
short of any.
do you want to change paved to paved or gravel?
Yeah, I think dirt is excessive. I mean, that's
okay.
Well,
dirt, yeah.
I don't think anyone should have a dirt driveway.
Okay.
I mean, if it's dusty, it's gonna upset neighbors. Nevertheless,
it's not really a driveway.
Well,
Right, it's a
okay,
dirt
so
road.
you could say other than a paved or graveled?
Gravel filled, is that the terminology?
Gravel.
It's just gravel, yeah.
Is it gravel or graveled with an ED on the end?
I think it's gravel, V-E-L.
Gravel. G-R-E.
Well, I know the word gravel is gravel,
I
but
could
I mean,
Google
per
it for
se,
you.
I think it'd just be gravel area, paved or gravel area.
Can
paved.
you make an amendment, please?
Well, we're
not discussing it.
We're discussing making one.
Someone will have to make that once we figure out the wordsmithing here. I don't know. At least with gravel, it's an unfinished road. It's less likely to be at the scrutiny of somebody, unless there was a real complaint about the condition of the road. And like I said, if somebody's got a dusty dirt road that's affecting a neighbor, then that's when really it's going to be enforced.
I assume gravel was cheaper than having the driveway paved.
Absolutely.
It's gravel, G-R-A-V-E-L. A gravel driveway.
So gravel is the correct word?
Well, I think we were talking, well, do you want right now it says it refers to a paved area. I was asking if we're going to add gravel, would it be paved or graveled area?
No.
Or just gravel area?
Gravel.
Because gravel
Gravel.
would be an adjective, so to speak.
Gravel.
Gravel, okay. And then, several
Such
words
paved.
later, when it says, and such paved or gravel area shall not exceed 20% of the.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then, I guess then I'll make an amendment, I'll propose an amendment to add, to twice add the words or gravel after the two words, or the two areas where the word paved appears. Gravel.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Will you, Walter, will you allow your motion to be amended?
I will, but I will say that definitions here show that gravel is an affordable outdoor paving material.
Oh.
Hence the definition paving. I think.
So
It'd
paved,
be a
your
hard argument to-
gravel would be included under paved?
I'm just thinking it'd be a hard thing to enforce because it's a murky definition.
Gravel?
What is the definition of paved?
No, a person who has a gravel driveway is told you have to pave it. He's going to say it's paved gravel.
Paved with
I'm just looking at other definitions here. You might be okay just the way it is.
Well, I mean,
second this amendment.
if the board agrees that we want to allow people, if they wish, to have a gravel driveway as an alternative.
It might allow. You know what? If technically yes. If
I would think
it's
we
a
ought
comfort
to
level.
add the words
okay.
or gravel.
I agree because it's a comfort level.
It's still limited to 20%.
It's a comfort level. Yes.
Yes, of course. Yes, but I mean, it's still limited to 20%.
So you can't rock your
I will second that motion, that amendment to the motion to add gravel.
You proposed it.
No, I proposed it. He proposed it.
You proposed it, so you did an amendment.
No, I moved the Article 13 in the suggested format, and then an amendment has been made and seconded to add the word gravel.
Or the words or gravel.
Or gravel.
Okay,
So we got that?
I need a motion for the amendment first.
He did.
I
Bruce
did.
made the motion. I seconded it.
Yes, to add the words or gravel
So
after.
you proposed it, you made a motion. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, so he proposed to make a motion. The motion was proposed.
Do you get extra pay as our parliamentarian, or?
It's just.
That's fine. No, yeah, she's typing it correctly.
I'm proposing that the proposed bylaw be amended by twice adding the words or gravel after the two areas on the second line where the word paved appears, so that it will then say paved or gravel area and paved or gravel area.
Right, you proposed, and I need someone to actually make a motion.
He's making the motion.
I thought I was making a motion to do that.
I make a motion.
He's a motion
Fine,
making.
I'm making a motion to add those words.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it's just,
Okay.
okay.
And I seconded it. No, actually, I seconded it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion about this proposed amendment? No. All right, then all in favor?
That was the amendment as proposal.
This is voting on the
as
or.
amended.
This is no. This is just
we're
voting
on the amendment.
This is voting on the or gravel.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so the or gravel amendment or two or gravel amendments are adopted 4-0. Okay, now is there any further discussion on the proposed Article 13
as amended?
As amended.
No.
No. Okay. All right, then all those in favor of the proposed Article 13 as just amended?
To recommend the town meeting.
To recommend it at town meeting.
Okay.
Yes, okay, so that will be recommended 4-0.
That's all right.
I'm now, we're now moving on to Article 14, which is to add a definition of family to the zoning bylaws definitions.
I'm going to make a motion not to recommend Article 14 as presented.
Meaning
a motion not to recommend Article 14
You're meaning the
as
one
presented.
in the article.
As in the warrant.
Yes, as in the warrant.
Okay. All right, I'll second that.
Okay.
Is there any, we're not discussing, just to make it clear, we're not discussing what I passed out tonight. We're discussing what appears in the...
But I'm going to make a motion to replace Article 14.
Okay, obviously. But okay, is there any further discussion on the original proposed article?
No.
Okay. All those in favor of, I guess, not recommending the original version of this article?
You have to make an amendment because I think it's in the warrant.
Actually, that's...
Can we strike the language, you think, or do...
No, it's, you're making a motion to not recommend the definition as in the warrant.
Right.
So you have
Actually, would it be simpler to make a motion to replace the original language with...
No, actually, you're right.
new language?
No, we need to vote on not recommending it, okay?
say
That's the
not
official recommendation. Then we can then discuss an amendment, and then that's what, we'll have to, someone will have to read it town meeting.
Oh, okay, then I think
Right,
it
Don?
might, just to make it simpler, or at least perhaps more comprehensible, I think we should make the amendment to endorse the original Article 14. No. And then
No, you
we
don't have to
vote
recommend
yes
it.
or no.
No, you don't have to recommend it.
No.
We're voting to recommend, no.
We've already got a motion on the floor to not recommend
Right.
the original.
Okay, it's
Which
just
has
I
been
thought it
seconded.
might- all right, fine.
It's already
All those in favor of not recommending the originally proposed definition of family?
Got it.
Okay.
Now, Bruce, I'll explain. See, what happens at town meeting, we read into the record that we do not recommend that. Then the moderator will recognize, hopefully, somebody here to make an amendment to that.
And now, this is where you say, I make a motion to recommend this definition right now.
Which we should give it a title or something. I mean, I guess we have to identify it.
Replacement Article 14.
Maybe the
Call it the Colton family amendment.
Yeah.
Really, seriously, shouldn't we call it something like that? Otherwise, we have to reference it.
Well, you can call it that, but I would think maybe the revised, the substitute family definition, or substitute definition of family, or something?
Substitute Article 14.
Yeah, substitute Article 14. That's good.
And so that should be labeled as a exhibit of tonight's.
I make a motion to accept the substitute Article 14 drafted by Bruce Colton as is.
I'll second that motion.
Do you need or do you want another copy of it? Okay, is there any discussion of the substitute Article 14?
Nope.
Okay, then I guess I will move the question. All those in favor of recommending the substitute Article 14 to the town meeting signify by raising their hands. Okay, it's recommended by a vote of 4-0. Okay.
That's just a reminder what will happen here is this will all go to town council. They will then work with the moderator to make sure this is all streamlined.
I see the town moderator in court almost every day.
You can tell them what's coming down the pike then. All right.
The person ask questions or no?
Well, it's sort of
It's a little
closed to the
late,
public.
but
It goes.
well, I'll allow you to.
I just have a question on halfway house.
Could you just go up one minute, please?
Yeah.
And then tell me your name and your address.
Ann Cowan, 165 Lawrence Drive. And I'm sorry I didn't get here earlier, but I just noticed halfway houses. Are we encouraging halfway houses in Long Meadow, or is this something that we've always allowed in Long Meadow, or are we developing this new definition of family to encourage halfway houses to come?
Well, I don't know that we're encouraging any of these things, but per se, but we'd be allowing them to actually just.
Going back to kind of earlier, Mr. Colton.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Kind of the purpose of why this came forward was not to really allow any more than already is allowed, but there were some concerns about with the casino possibly coming. And so it was more to address what wouldn't be allowed versus trying to allow more.
Okay, currently we do allow
In a residential zone.
Yeah, it's not expanding. There's currently no definition of family.
No, I think it's a good thing, but the halfway houses kind of jumped out at me as like, gee, do we want to encourage this? If we have to do it, we have to.
Isn't it?
Yeah, here it is, 6.2.
I think he's going to give you an exact.
Well, currently, among the explicitly allowed uses would be hospitals, sanitariums, convalescent homes, rest homes. I mean, those are all currently explicitly allowed. I don't know that they're...
Halfway houses are a little bit different than...
I don't know that halfway houses are... I'm just trying to check. I'm not sure that they are explicitly allowed, although I'm also not sure that under federal law, the people in the halfway house might well be protected under federal civil rights laws, and banning them could well
Could we be silent on it, or? I mean, I'm not
I would not, well, certainly, we never heard your comment. I would note this room was fairly full, well, it was full when we did the Long Meadow Shops proposal, and it was still fairly full when we did the definition of family, and copies of that had been passed out to everybody. And you're actually the first person who has raised that issue. I mean, that doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're more insightful than everyone else. But I mean, it certainly didn't jump out at anybody else.
Well, I'm also reading that last sentence. When you start after the semicolon, or a group of individuals regardless of relation, kind of...
Residing in...
Right, the whole rest of the sentence only saying if it's allowed under federal or state law, and that would preempt us anyways. Kind of saying we're just... we're not trying to overstep any federal or state. Like, I think that's just
Right,
a
it's after the
catch-all.
semicolon. Yeah, you're right.
I don't think we're saying we specifically. I think once you start with the or a group in that last section, that it's saying those would be allowed if permitted under federal or state law, which we wouldn't be able to.
Overrule
Are you not
in
interpreting?
any case.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there also is...
That's how I was interpreting the last. Because it talks about the four are residing.
I might add, just parenthetically, though none of us liked the way it was written, the definition of family that was provided or suggested by town council also specifically says people residing. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, that's mine. Excuse me. I take that back.
Halfway houses.
Non-related.
No, actually, that does not. I take that back.
Well, I think Heather's right. I think that the semicolon, it brackets it off as specific applications to like a federal law, and we're not encouraging any of these uses.
Well, the proposed definition includes federal and/or state law and/or regulations.
Correct, which is fine.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's
As
my
we-
interpretation of after the semicolon.
Well, actually, the or regulations was in the one we don't approve of. However, I would suggest that regulations is a subset of federal and state law. So I don't think you, realistically, I don't think there's any difference.
No, I'm just reading off the non-recommended definition.
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Okay.
Anyway, moving.
Well, I guess moving back to Article. Thank you for your comment, Laura.
Article 15.
Moving to Article 15, which is the essentially the amendment that's being suggested by, or primarily suggested by the ZBA.
Thought we got there, but
Does anyone have any?
I will make a motion to recommend Article 15 in the town warrant as presented.
And is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any discussion of this? Okay, then all those in favor of recommending Article 15 at the town meeting, raise your hand. And all those opposed? Okay, so the vote is 3-1 in favor. Okay, well, that's basically it for the night. We're meeting, I believe,
Wednesday.
November 5th, next Wednesday.
November 5th, the day after Election Day. And unless anybody has
I'd just
anything they'd like to bring up.
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing. Rebecca really has to get you this tonight minutes because ASAP, because there's a 21-day requirement for us to file with the select board. If we do not make a recommendation, select board can reopen the warrant and actually have this item stricken from the town meeting.
Somebody no later than Monday.
Okay.
What day is the town meeting?
It will be within 21 days, I believe.
It should be?
The 18th.
The 18th.
The 20
Well, actually,
pretty close.
so that's, isn't that actually less than 21 days? Today's the 29th.
1:15.
So isn't that like 20 days from now?
Well, you have two options. You can either, Bruce, you can either write the recommendation and send it on, or we can actually make an oral presentation
It's
on the
less than
floor
21.
of town meeting as long as it's within 21 days.
Okay, well, normally,
We've done it in the past.
well, let me just say, are you going to be able to, what I would suggest, or at least what we've done in the past, is I can attend the, or I would
can't
be
get it to
anyway.
you before midnight, but I can get it to you.
Oh, no, not within the next, like,
You said
12
21 days. Today
You
is
have
the 21-day mark.
No, 20 days from today, the public hearing.
Are you referring to our last minutes?
No, these
No,
minutes.
these minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, will you be
Well, no, he
able-
needs a detail. All he needs is details to...
Will you be able to do it by next week or something?
Yeah.
Actually, if we have it for the meeting on next Wednesday, it's plenty of time.
I can have them done to you no later than Sunday.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Because this has to go to town council, and, he has to, and whatever has to go forward from
I
there.
can try and get it done Friday evening.
Is the select board meeting, do you know if the select board is meeting on Monday?
You meet on Monday.
Would town council be at that meeting? Would you like a copy? Well, basically, everything we did was about the same, but would you like a,
Oh, but here he has to.
well, actually, we didn't change it.
Are we on, do you want anybody from the planning board to speak to any part of this?
Nice, in case there's a question.
Okay, so
Bruce, you want to?
Richard Foster's here tonight, and he's asked that someone from the planning board discuss tonight's proceedings with the select board on
Bruce,
Monday's meeting, which is
Can you make the select board meeting?
November 3rd.
I assume I can. I obviously don't have my calendar with me, but
What's that?
I'm assuming you meet, I guess, here at 7?
No, we're starting at 6.
No.
Oh, you're starting at 6?
6 o'clock, okay.
If you can't, give me a
Do you
call.
know roughly when you'd be, whatever,
Well,
getting
it's
to
on the
this
agenda,
part?
well, they have an agenda.
I'll give it to you tomorrow and let you know.
Okay. Here, I'll give you a card with my email on it.
Okay.
Okay, so...
Okay, there's my home number and my email. And the card is my office.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion? No? All those in favor of adjourning? Okay, we've adjourned.
Thank you. And thank you to LCTV for covering this tonight. We appreciate the extra effort.